Have you ever wondered who the invisible angels in your life were? The strangers whose kindness changed everything but whose names you never knew? We go through life collecting blessings. Some we recognize immediately: the parent who sacrificed, the friend who stayed, the spouse who forgave. We know their names. We can thank them. We can look them in the eyes and say, "You changed my life." But what about the others? What about the teacher who believed in you when you didn't believe in yourself, whose name you can't quite remember? The neighbor who helped your family during that terrible winter, who moved away before you could say thank you? The stranger who paid for your meal when you were counting pennies, who disappeared before you could turn around? These invisible angels walk among us. They change trajectories. They save lives. They answer prayers. And then they vanish, leaving only ripples behind. This is a story about one of those angels. A woman whose face was captured in a single photograph. A woman whose name was never known. A woman whose kindness echoed across 60 years and 3 generations. This is Rachel's story, but it might also be yours. The house stood empty now. Every room held memories, but none of them felt quite real. Rachel Morrison stood in the doorway of her grandmother's bedroom, 42 years old and feeling like a child again. Lost, uncertain, alone. Dorothy's funeral had been 3 days ago, the kind of funeral that small towns do well. Crowded pews, hymns sung off-key but with feeling, casseroles that kept arriving even after everyone had gone home. Rachel had shaken hands with people she half remembered from childhood summers. They all said the same thing. Your grandmother was a blessing. She had such faith. She never complained, not once. Rachel nodded through it all, smiled politely, and wondered if they knew the woman she knew. The grandmother who would sit in her rocking chair for hours, Bible open on her lap, lips moving in silent prayer. The woman who kept a journal by her bedside and wrote in it every single night. The woman who, even at 89, would wake before dawn to watch the sunrise and whisper, "Thank you, Lord, for one more day." Now Rachel was here, alone in the house that smelled like lavender and old books, tasked with sorting through 89 years of a life. Her mother had offered to help, but Rachel said no. She needed this, needed the quiet, needed the space to think about her own life. The divorce finalized 6 months ago, her 2 teenagers angry and confused. Her job as a high school English teacher feeling more meaningless every day. The bedroom held the most weight, the brass bed frame, the quilt Dorothy had made, the nightstand with its lamp, its reading glasses, its stack of devotional books. And there, right on top, the Bible. Rachel picked it up carefully. It was heavy, leather-bound, the pages thin as tissue paper. The cover was worn smooth from decades of handling. Dorothy's name was embossed in fading gold letters on the front. Rachel opened it. The pages were covered in notes, underlined verses, stars drawn in the margins, dates written next to certain passages. This wasn't just a book. This was a conversation, a lifetime of conversations between Dorothy and God. But as Rachel flipped through the pages, something fell out, something that landed on the quilt with barely a sound. A photograph. Rachel picked it up, her heart suddenly beating faster without knowing why. The photograph was old, black and white. The edges were soft, slightly yellowed. It showed a young woman, maybe 25 or 30 years old, sitting in what looked like a diner booth. She wore a simple dress with a Peter Pan collar, the style from the 1950s. Her hair was dark, pulled back in a neat bun, but it was her face that caught Rachel. The woman was smiling, but not at the camera. She was looking at something or someone just out of frame. Her expression was gentle, kind. There was something luminous about her, even in the faded photograph. Rachel turned it over. On the back, written in her grandmother's unmistakable handwriting, were only 5 words and a date. Never forget, June 14th, 1957. Rachel stared at the photograph. She didn't recognize the woman. She wasn't family. Rachel had seen every family photo album Dorothy owned, had heard every story. This woman had never been mentioned, never been shown. Who was she? Why was her photograph hidden in Dorothy's Bible? And why those words? Never forget. Rachel noticed which book of the Bible the photograph had been tucked into. The book of Ruth, the story of loyalty, of a woman who stayed when she could have left, of faithfulness rewarded, of unexpected blessings. Rachel walked to the closet. If there was one photograph, maybe there were more. Maybe there were answers. She pulled down boxes from the top shelf, old Christmas decorations, tax documents, family photographs she recognized, and then shoved far in the back corner a smaller box, heavier. Inside were letters, dozens of them, tied together with faded ribbon, and beneath the letters, a journal, small, leather-bound, filled with her grandmother's handwriting. Rachel carried the box back to the bed. She opened the journal to a random page. The date read April 3rd, 1983. The entry was short. Saw a young mother in the grocery store today, crying in the cereal aisle. Her baby was crying too. I remembered being her. I remembered June 14th, 1957. I remembered the angel who saved us. So I paid for her groceries. Didn't tell her my name. Just said, "Someone did this for me once. Pass it on." Rachel's hands trembled. What happened on June 14th, 1957? What angel? What salvation? She flipped to the beginning of the journal. The first entry was dated January 1st, 1958. New year, new life. 6 months ago, I thought we were finished. I thought God had forgotten us. I was wrong. I will never forget what happened. I will never forget her face, even though I never learned her name. This journal is my promise to remember, to be grateful, to be for others what she was for me. Rachel looked at the photograph again. The woman's gentle smile. The year, 1957. This was her. This was the angel. But who was she? What had she done? And why had Dorothy kept it secret for 60 years? Rachel pulled out the stack of letters. Most were love letters between Dorothy and Edward from before they married. But beneath those, Rachel found something different. Letters that had been written but never sent. The first one was dated June 20th, 1957, just 6 days after the date on the photograph. "Dear Angel," it began. Rachel's breath caught as she read the letter. Dorothy described sitting in a diner, pregnant and terrified, about to lose her home. A stranger had sat beside her, had listened, had somehow arranged for Dorothy to get a job, 6 months of salary paid in advance, enough to save everything. Rachel sat back, the letter trembling in her hands. Her grandmother, desperate in 1957, a stranger in a diner, an act of profound generosity, a family saved. She picked up another journal, older, from 1956, 1957. She read entries chronicling Dorothy and Edward's descent into poverty, Edward unemployed for months, the pregnancy, the eviction notice, the desperation building until June 13th, 1957. "Tomorrow, the eviction is final. I've packed what we can carry. I don't know where we'll go. This morning I walked to Rosie's diner even though we can't afford it. I ordered just a coffee. I sat there and I cried. I actually cried in public. I've never felt so hopeless. I prayed, God, if you're there, if you care, please send someone. Send anyone. Send help." And then a gap. No entry for June 14th. The next entry was June 15th. She came. God sent someone. I don't know who she was, but she came. Rachel closed the journal and pressed her hands to her face. The desperation was overwhelming, even reading about it 6 decades later. Her grandmother had been one day away from homelessness. And then a stranger had intervened. Rachel thought about her own mother, who had been born 7 months after June 1957. She thought about herself, born to that daughter 28 years later. She thought about her own 2 children. None of them would exist if not for the woman in the photograph. Rachel glanced at the clock. Nearly 5 a.m. She'd been reading all night. She should sleep. But she couldn't. Not yet. She opened her laptop and searched. Riverside, Illinois in the 1950s. Rosie's Diner. Most of it was gone now. But there was a historical society. Rachel found their website and sent an email explaining what she was looking for. Then she called her mother, even though it was barely dawn. Her mother answered, voice thick with sleep. "Rachel, what's wrong?" "Mom, did Grandma ever tell you about June 14th, 1957? Silence. Then, "How do you know about that?" "So, you do know." Her mother sighed. "She told me once. I was 16 and complaining about something stupid. And Mom sat me down and told me about the woman in the diner. that she and Dad almost lost everything before I was born, that they were going to be evicted, that a stranger gave them money for a job, who saved them. Did she tell you the woman's name? No. She said she never learned it. She said that was the hardest part, having this enormous gratitude and nowhere to put it, except into prayers for someone she'd never see again. I'm going to find out who she was. Rachel, honey, she's probably dead. It was almost 70 years ago. I know, but Grandma never got to say thank you. Maybe I can say it for her. They talked for a few more minutes, then Rachel let her mother go back to sleep. But Rachel was wide awake now, energized by purpose. At noon, Rachel drove to the Riverside Historical Society. An elderly woman named Helen greeted her warmly and looked at the photograph with interest. Rosie's Diner. I remember it. My father used to take me there for milkshakes. She looked up at Rachel. The diner's gone now, of course, but I might know someone who can help. Betty Sullivan. She was a waitress at Rosie's for 30 years. She's 92 now, lives at Meadowview Assisted Living. Rachel's heart raced. Could I talk to her? Helen called Betty, and within the hour, Rachel was sitting in Betty Sullivan's room at the assisted living facility. Betty was tiny, perhaps 90 pounds, with white hair and eyes that were still bright. She smiled when Rachel showed her the photograph. "Oh," Betty whispered. "Oh, I remember her." Rachel leaned forward. "You do? I took this photograph. I was working that day. It was a Thursday, slow afternoon. Your grandmother came in around 2 o'clock. She sat in the back booth and ordered just coffee. I could see she'd been crying." Betty described watching the stranger sit down next to Dorothy, how they'd talked for over an hour, how the stranger had paid for both their coffees, then asked Betty about the town, about employment opportunities, about Dorothy specifically. "The woman asked me about Mr. Patterson's store. Was he honest? Could he be trusted?" I said yes, absolutely. So she left the diner. About an hour later, she came back. She gave me $200 and told me to make sure Dorothy's meals were covered for a month. Then she asked for Mr. Patterson's address. "Did you ever see her again?" "No, that was the only time. But the next day, Dorothy came rushing into the diner, crying but smiling this time. She said Mr. Patterson had offered her a job, that someone had paid him to hire her. Dorothy wanted to find the woman, to thank her. But I didn't know her name. But you took this photograph." Betty nodded. "When the woman came back that second time, I grabbed the camera we kept behind the counter. I snapped the picture without her knowing. I had it developed and gave it to Dorothy a week later." Rachel felt tears forming. "Do you remember anything else? Anything at all?" Betty thought hard. She had a soft voice, educated. She said she was passing through, heading west. She mentioned visiting someone, a sister, maybe, in California, and she had a suitcase, a small brown leather one, like she'd come straight from the bus station. A bus, heading west. Rachel thanked Betty and rushed to the library. She spent hours researching with the help of a librarian named Marcus. Greyhound routes in 1957, passenger records. They found a scanned passenger list from June 14, 1957. Chicago to Los Angeles route. 8 passengers, all men except one name, partially obscured. E. Thompson. Or maybe Thomason. It wasn't much, but it was more than Dorothy had ever known. Rachel called the National Archives in Chicago and left a detailed message. Then she went back to Dorothy's house and waited. The house was quiet, but Rachel felt for the first time since her grandmother's death like Dorothy was still there, still speaking, still teaching. Rachel gathered the journal, the letters, and the photograph. She had work to do, a mystery to unravel, because her grandmother had left her an inheritance. Not money, not property, but something far more valuable, a question that demanded an answer. What does it mean to be grateful for a blessing you can never repay? Rachel woke to her phone ringing. Sunlight streamed through Dorothy's bedroom curtains. She'd fallen asleep in her grandmother's bed, still wearing yesterday's clothes, the Bible tucked under her arm like a child's stuffed animal. The caller ID showed an unknown Chicago number. Rachel answered, her voice thick with sleep. "Miss Morrison, this is Dr. Patricia Chen from the National Archives in Chicago. You left a message yesterday about passenger records from 1957? Rachel sat up immediately, suddenly wide awake. Yes, thank you for calling back. Well, your request was intriguing. We don't get many queries about individual passengers from that era, but I did some digging this morning. Papers rustled in the background. You mentioned an E. Thompson, or Thomason, traveling westbound on Greyhound on June 14, 1957. That's right. I found 3 possible matches in our cross-reference databases. An Edward Thompson, age 62, an Elias Thomason, age 34, and an Eleanor Thompson, age 28, traveling from Pittsburgh to Los Angeles. Rachel's breath caught. Eleanor Thompson, 28. That would match the age of the woman in my photograph. I thought so too. Would you like me to send you what we have on her? Please, anything you have. It's not much. A Social Security application from 1945, a border crossing record from 1952, and— Dr. Chen paused. A death certificate. Rachel felt her stomach drop. She'd known it was likely, but hearing it confirmed made it real. When did she die? August 3, 1959, in Los Angeles, California. She was only 30 years old. Rachel did the math. 2 years after she'd helped Dorothy. 2 years after she'd given away what might have been everything she had. What did she die from? The death certificate lists the cause as complications from tuberculosis. She'd been ill for several months. Rachel closed her eyes. The woman in the photograph had been dying. Maybe she'd known it. Maybe that's why she'd been traveling to California. And in the middle of her own suffering, she'd stopped to help a stranger. Dr. Chen, is there anything else? Family members listed? Let me see. Yes. The death certificate lists a sister, Catherine Thompson, residing at an address in Pasadena. And there's a notation that Eleanor was unmarried. No children. Could you send me everything you have? The address, all the documents. I'll email them within the hour. After they hung up, Rachel sat in stunned silence. Eleanor Thompson. After 67 years, the angel finally had a name. She opened her laptop and searched. Eleanor Thompson, Pittsburgh. Eleanor Thompson, Los Angeles. Eleanor Thompson, tuberculosis. She found an obituary, small, only a few lines, in the Los Angeles Times from August 1959. Eleanor May Thompson, 30, of Pittsburgh, PA and Los Angeles, CA, passed away August 3rd at St. Mary's Hospital. She was preceded in death by her parents, Robert and Helen Thompson. She is survived by her sister, Catherine Thompson Williams of Pasadena. A private service was held. That was it. An entire life reduced to 4 sentences. No mention of kindness. No mention of strangers helped. No mention of families saved. The email from Dr. Chen arrived. Rachel opened the attachments with trembling hands. Eleanor's Social Security application showed her birth date, March 15, 1931. Born in Pittsburgh to Robert Thompson, a steelworker, and Helen Thompson, a homemaker. And the death certificate, Eleanor May Thompson, tuberculosis, contracted approximately 1957, died at St. Mary's Hospital, Los Angeles. Next of kin, Catherine Thompson Williams, address in Pasadena. 1957. Eleanor had contracted tuberculosis around the same time she'd been traveling through Riverside. She might have already been sick when she sat down next to Dorothy, might have known she was dying even then, and she'd still given away 6 months of salary to help a stranger. Rachel made a decision. She booked a flight to Los Angeles, leaving that afternoon. The address, Dr. Chen had given her was from 1959, but it was a starting point. Catherine Thompson Williams might still be alive. She'd be in her 90s now, but it was possible. Rachel packed quickly. She took the photograph, the journals, and the letters. She needed these things with her. They were proof of what Eleanor had done. The flight was 5 hours. Rachel spent them reading Dorothy's journals again, but this time with new understanding. Now she knew who the angel was. Now she could imagine Eleanor Thompson, 28 years old, sick with tuberculosis, traveling across the country, sitting down next to a crying pregnant woman, and deciding that this stranger's suffering mattered more than her own. Rachel landed in Los Angeles at 7 p.m. Pacific Time. She rented a car and drove to Pasadena in the dark. The address from 1959 was on a quiet street lined with old California bungalows. Rachel found the house number. The lights were on inside. She sat in the car for a long moment, gathering courage. What would she say? It sounded insane even to her, but she'd come this far. She had to try. Rachel walked to the front door and rang the bell. She heard footsteps inside. The porch light came on. The door opened. A woman stood there, perhaps in her early 70s, with gray hair and Eleanor's eyes. The same shape, the same gentle expression. "Can I help you?" Rachel's voice shook. "I'm looking for Catherine Thompson Williams." Or her family. The woman's face shifted, cautious now. "Catherine was my grandmother. She passed away in 2015. I'm her granddaughter, Jennifer. Who are you?" Rachel felt tears forming. "My name is Rachel Morrison. My grandmother was Dorothy Morrison, and your great-aunt Eleanor saved her life in 1957. Jennifer stared at her. "I'm sorry. What? Can I come in? Please. I have something to show you." Jennifer hesitated, then stepped back. "Okay, but just for a minute." Rachel followed her into a living room filled with comfortable furniture and family photographs. She sat on the couch and pulled out the photograph of Eleanor. "This is your great-aunt Eleanor, right? Taken in June 1957. Jennifer took the photograph carefully. "Where did you get this?" "I've never seen this picture of her. My grandmother kept it in her Bible for 60 years. Eleanor sat next to my grandmother in a diner in Illinois. My grandmother was pregnant, desperate, about to be evicted. And Eleanor gave her money. Enough money for 6 months of salary. She saved my grandmother's family. She saved my family. Everything I am exists because of Eleanor's kindness." Jennifer's hands trembled. "I don't understand. Aunt Eleanor died before I was born. My grandmother rarely talked about her. I know she was sick. I know she died young. But I never heard anything about her helping anyone in Illinois. She probably didn't tell anyone. My grandmother tried to find her for years. She never learned Eleanor's name. She just kept this photograph and prayed for her every single day for 6 decades. Jennifer sat down slowly, still staring at the photograph. "Every single day? Every single day. My grandmother just died 3 weeks ago. I found this photograph in her Bible. I've been trying to find Eleanor ever since, to say thank you, to let her family know what she did." Jennifer wiped her eyes. "My grandmother used to say that Eleanor was the kindest person she'd ever known, that she gave everything away, that she never kept anything for herself, but I always thought it was just the way you talk about people after they're gone. It wasn't exaggeration. Eleanor gave my grandmother everything she needed when my grandmother had nothing. And according to the death certificate, Eleanor was already sick with tuberculosis. She was dying, and she still helped a stranger." Jennifer stood up and walked to a bookshelf. She pulled down a small wooden box. "My grandmother left me this when she died. It's Aunt Eleanor's things. Not much. A few letters, some jewelry, a diary." She opened the box and pulled out a small leather journal. "I've never read it. It felt too private. But maybe you should read it." She handed the journal to Rachel. Rachel opened it with shaking hands. The handwriting was neat, feminine, strong. The first entry was dated January 1st, 1957. "New year, new diagnosis. The doctor says I have a year, maybe 2. Tuberculosis. My lungs are failing. I'm 26 years old and I'm dying. Catherine is devastated. She wants me to fight, to try every treatment, to never give up. But I'm tired. So tired. If this is God's plan, then I accept it. But I don't want to waste whatever time I have left. I don't want to spend my last year being afraid. I want to spend it being useful. I want to matter." Rachel could barely see through her tears. She flipped forward. March, April, May. Eleanor writing about her deteriorating health, about leaving Pittsburgh, about traveling west to California where the climate might help, about saying goodbye to friends who didn't know it was goodbye. And then, June 14th, 1957. Rachel's hands shook as she found the entry and began to read aloud. "Stopped in a small town in Illinois today. Riverside. I was waiting for my connecting bus when I decided to get coffee at a diner. I saw her immediately. A young woman, pregnant, crying. I've seen that look before. The look of someone who's drowning. I almost walked past. I'm dying. I have my own problems. But I couldn't. I just couldn't walk past that kind of pain. I sat down next to her, asked if she was okay, and she told me everything. Her husband, unemployed, about to lose their home, 4 months pregnant, no family, no help, no hope. She said she'd been praying for a miracle. She said she was starting to think God didn't hear women like her. I listened. I held her hand. I told her that God absolutely hears women like her, that I believe with everything in me that prayers matter, that suffering isn't the end of the story. And then I had this thought. What if I'm the answer? What if God put me on this bus, in this town, in this diner, at this exact moment, not despite my dying, but because of it? What if the last useful thing I do is help this woman? I have $800 saved. It's everything I have left. I was saving it for hospital bills, for treatment, for whatever comes next. But what if this is what it's for? What if this is why I worked those extra shifts? What if this is the point? I found out where she could get work. I paid for 6 months in advance. I paid for her meals. I gave away almost everything I have, and I've never felt more alive. Catherine will be furious. She'll say I needed that money, but I didn't. I need to die knowing I mattered. And today, I mattered. Today, I was the miracle someone prayed for. Today, I got to be God's hands. I didn't tell the woman my name. I didn't need her to thank me. I just needed to know that she'd be okay, that her baby would be born, that her family would survive. The bus is leaving soon. I'll never see her again, but wherever I go next, California or heaven, or wherever the dying go, I'll carry this with me. The memory of her face when hope returned, the knowledge that my last act was love. If this is the last good thing I do, it's enough. It's more than enough. Rachel couldn't breathe. Jennifer was crying beside her. They sat in silence, two women separated by generations but connected by Eleanor's kindness. Finally, Jennifer whispered, "She gave away everything? Everything. And my grandmother lived because of it. My mother was born because of it. I exist because of it. My children exist because of it. Eleanor's one act of kindness created 4 generations." Jennifer took the journal back, holding it like the sacred object it was. I wish I'd known her. You can honor her by living like she lived, by seeing suffering and refusing to walk past it, by being the answer to someone's prayer. They talked for hours. Rachel showed Jennifer all of Dorothy's journals, all the prayers, all the acts of kindness Dorothy had performed in Eleanor's name. Jennifer showed Rachel photographs of Eleanor as a child, as a teenager, as a young woman, born into poverty. Father died when she was 12, worked from age 14 to help support her mother and sister, never married because she was too busy caring for others, contracted tuberculosis from working in a crowded factory, spent her last 2 years traveling, giving away everything she had, trying to make her life matter. She'd died at St. Mary's Hospital with Catherine holding her hand. As midnight approached, Jennifer said, "I have something for you." She went to a closet and came back with a small suitcase. Brown leather, worn at the edges. This was Aunt Eleanor's, the one she traveled with. "I think your grandmother would want you to have it." Rachel opened the suitcase carefully. Inside was a small Bible, and tucked into the Bible were more photographs. Eleanor with Catherine, Eleanor at work, Eleanor smiling at a church picnic, and one more photograph. Eleanor and Dorothy sitting together in the diner booth. Someone else must have taken it. Betty, perhaps. Dorothy was mid-sentence, her face wet with tears. Eleanor was listening, leaning forward, completely focused. "I didn't know this picture existed," Rachel breathed. "It was in her Bible. Maybe she kept it to remember the day she chose love over fear." Rachel looked at Jennifer. "Can I keep this? I want to put it with my grandmother's Bible. They should be together." "Keep it. This belongs with your grandmother's story." They exchanged contact information. They promised to stay in touch. They agreed that Eleanor's story needed to be told. As Rachel drove back to her hotel at 2 a.m., she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. Purpose. Eleanor Thompson had died at 30, poor and sick. The world had barely noticed, but she'd left behind something more valuable than wealth. She'd left behind proof that kindness matters, that one moment of compassion can ripple forward across generations. Dorothy had received that gift and had spent 60 years multiplying it, and now it was Rachel's turn. Tomorrow, Rachel would fly home. She'd go back to her job, her children, her ordinary life, but she'd go back changed, She'd go back understanding what her grandmother had understood. The greatest inheritance isn't money. It's the choice to be kind when kindness costs everything. Eleanor Thompson proved it. Dorothy Morrison lived it. And now Rachel would carry it forward. Because love doesn't end with death. It just finds new hands to hold. Rachel's flight home was delayed 3 hours. She sat in the Los Angeles airport, exhausted but unable to sleep, Eleanor's suitcase on the seat beside her. She'd packed Dorothy's Bible, the journals, and both photographs. The one her grandmother had kept for 60 years, and the new one showing both women together in that sacred moment. She opened Dorothy's Bible one more time. The pages fell open naturally to the book of Ruth, where the photograph had lived for 6 decades. Rachel read the passage again, but this time with full understanding. Ruth had been a stranger in a foreign land. Naomi had been a widow with nothing, and Boaz had been the one who showed them kindness they didn't deserve. "May the Lord repay you for what you have done," Naomi had said to Ruth. "May you be richly rewarded." Dorothy had lived that verse. She'd received undeserved kindness from Eleanor, and she'd spent 6 decades repaying it by becoming Eleanor for others. Rachel pulled out her phone and scrolled through her messages. 17 from her ex-husband about Thanksgiving logistics. 9 from her daughter complaining about homework. 4 from her principal about next week's parent-teacher conferences. Her normal life, her ordinary problems. They felt different now, smaller but also more precious. Because this life, these annoying messages, these mundane problems, this ordinary existence, had almost never happened. If Eleanor hadn't stopped in Riverside on June 14, 1957, Dorothy and Edward would have been evicted. They might have lost each other. Rachel's mother would never have been born. Rachel wouldn't exist. Her children wouldn't exist. Everything, absolutely everything, hinged on one woman's decision to sit down next to a crying stranger. Rachel typed a message to her children. "I love you both. I'm sorry I've been gone so long. I'll explain everything when I get home. But I need you to know, we're all here because someone was kind to someone else a long time ago, and I'm going to make sure we continue that kindness." Her daughter responded immediately. "Mom, are you okay? That's weird, even for you." Rachel smiled. "I'm better than okay. I'll see you tomorrow." She opened Eleanor's small Bible, the one from the suitcase. The pages were worn, well read. Eleanor had underlined passages about suffering, about purpose, about using your life well even when it's short. In the margin of 2 Corinthians 4:17, Eleanor had written in tiny letters, "Our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory." June 14, 1957. I understand now. Rachel felt tears forming. Eleanor had seen her own dying as momentary, had seen helping Dorothy as eternal, had understood, even in her suffering, that one act of love could create something that death itself couldn't destroy. The flight finally boarded. Rachel dozed off somewhere over Nevada and dreamed of the diner, of Eleanor sitting down next to Dorothy, of 2 women who should never have met, brought together by divine timing or cosmic accident or whatever force in the universe connects strangers who need each other. When Rachel woke, the plane was landing. It was 6 a.m. when she finally pulled into her driveway. Her house looked exactly the same. Nothing had changed. But everything had changed. Rachel carried Eleanor's suitcase inside. The house was quiet. Her kids were still asleep. She went to her bedroom and sat on the edge of her bed, suddenly overwhelmed by everything she'd learned in the past week. She thought about Eleanor, 28 years old, dying of tuberculosis, traveling across the country to seek treatment or warmer weather, or just to see her sister one last time. She must have been scared, must have been in pain, must have been focused on her own survival. But she'd stopped anyway. She'd seen Dorothy and she'd stopped. That's what holiness looked like. Not immunity from suffering, but the choice to care about someone else's suffering, even while drowning in your own. Rachel pulled out her checkbook and wrote a check for $500 to a local organization that helped struggling families. In the memo line, she wrote, "In memory of Eleanor Thompson and Dorothy Morrison." Then she opened her laptop and created a document. She titled it, "The Angel Fund." She wrote down rules for herself. Every month, 1 act of anonymous kindness. Never reveal your name unless absolutely necessary. Look for the desperate, the drowning, the ones who've run out of hope. Don't judge if they deserve it. Nobody deserves grace. That's what makes it grace. Keep a journal. Write down what you did and why. Someday, pass this responsibility to your children. At 7 a.m., her daughter emerged from her bedroom, hair disheveled, still in pajamas. "You're back." "I'm back." "Was it worth it? Whatever grandma thing you were doing?" Rachel smiled. "Sit down. I need to tell you something." Her daughter groaned. "Mom, I have school in an hour. This is more important than school." Something in Rachel's voice made her daughter pause. She sat down at the table, suddenly attentive. Rachel pulled out the photograph of Eleanor and Dorothy in the diner. "Do you see these two women?" Her daughter looked. "Who are they?" "The one crying is your great-grandmother Dorothy. This picture was taken 3 months before your grandmother was born. The woman sitting across from her is Eleanor Thompson. They'd never met before this moment." But Eleanor sat down next to Dorothy and asked if she was okay, and Dorothy told her everything, that she was about to lose her home, that her husband couldn't find work, that she was terrified. "Okay." And Eleanor gave her everything, literally everything. 6 months of salary, enough to save Dorothy's family. She gave it to a complete stranger, and then she left. Dorothy never even knew her name. Her daughter was paying attention now. "Really? Really? Your great-grandmother kept this photograph for 60 years. She prayed for Eleanor every single day. And I just spent the last week tracking down Eleanor's family. Eleanor died 2 years after this picture was taken. She was 30 years old. She had tuberculosis. She was dying when she helped Dorothy, and she gave away everything she had." Her daughter stared at the photograph. "That's insane. That's faith. That's what it looks like when someone decides that another person's suffering matters more than their own fear. And here's the thing, honey. If Eleanor hadn't helped Dorothy, Dorothy and Edward would have been evicted. They might have lost each other. Your grandmother would never have been born. I would never have been born. You would never have been born." Her daughter's eyes widened. "Wait, what?" "We exist because a dying woman decided to be kind to a stranger. Everything we are, everything we have, every breath we take, it's all because of Eleanor Thompson's kindness on June 14th, 1957. Her daughter touched the photograph carefully. "Does she know? Did anyone ever tell her?" "No. She died without knowing. But your great-grandmother spent 60 years trying to say thank you anyway. She helped hundreds of people, anonymous gifts, paid bills, given groceries. She became Eleanor for other people. She spent her whole life being a walking thank you note." "That's really beautiful, Mom." Rachel pulled out her laptop and showed her daughter the Angel Fund document. "I'm going to do the same thing. Every month I'm going to help someone who needs it, anonymously. And someday, when you're older, I'm going to ask you to do it too, to keep Eleanor's kindness going, to make sure it never stops rippling forward." Her daughter was crying now. "Can I help? I have babysitting money. Not much, but some." Rachel's heart swelled. Yes, you can help." At 8 a.m., her son stumbled into the kitchen. Rachel told him the same story. He listened, skeptical at first, but by the end, he was quiet, thoughtful. "So we're alive because of some random lady in the 50s?" he finally said. "She wasn't random. She was exactly who God needed her to be at exactly the right moment." Her son nodded slowly. "That's actually pretty cool." Over the next few days, Rachel settled back into her routine. She went back to teaching. She navigated Thanksgiving split between her house and her ex-husband's. She graded papers and did laundry and made dinner. But everything was different now. She saw her students differently. Each one was carrying something. Struggles she couldn't see, pain she didn't know about. And maybe she could be their Eleanor. One afternoon, she noticed a student staying late after class. Marcus, a junior who'd been struggling all semester. He was sitting at his desk, head down, shoulders shaking. Rachel sat down next to him. "Marcus, are you okay?" He looked up, eyes red. "My mom lost her job. We might lose our apartment. I don't know what to do." Rachel thought of Dorothy, crying in a diner. She thought of Eleanor sitting down and asking the same question. "Tell me what you need," Rachel said. They talked for an hour. Rachel made phone calls. She connected Marcus's mother with resources. She paid for groceries anonymously through a local church program. She didn't fix everything. She couldn't. But she did something. She didn't walk past the suffering. And when Marcus thanked her, she said, "Someone did this for my family once. I'm just passing it on." That became her phrase. Whenever she helped someone, a struggling colleague, a neighbor who needed childcare, a student who couldn't afford lunch, she said the same thing. "Someone did this for my family once. I'm just passing it on." She never told them about Eleanor. That felt too personal, too sacred. But she carried Eleanor with her. In her wallet, Rachel kept a small copy of the photograph from the diner. Every time she felt tired or frustrated or tempted to look away from someone suffering, she looked at that picture. Eleanor, dying and broke, choosing kindness anyway. In December, Rachel received an email from Jennifer. "I've been thinking about Aunt Eleanor every day since you left. I started my own angel fund. Last week, I paid off a medical bill for a single mother in my office. I didn't tell her it was me. I just left a note. Someone did this for my family once. Pass it on. Thank you for giving me this purpose. Thank you for showing me that my great-aunt's life mattered." Rachel cried reading it. The ripples were continuing. Eleanor's kindness from 1957 was still creating waves. On Christmas Eve, Rachel gathered her children and her mother. They sat in Dorothy's old house. Rachel hadn't sold it yet, and Rachel told them the complete story, beginning to end. Dorothy's desperation, Eleanor's kindness, 60 years of gratitude, the search across the country, the discovery of Eleanor's name, the meeting with Jennifer, all of it. Her mother cried through the entire telling. "I knew some of this, but not all. Not how sick Eleanor was. Not that she gave away everything. She wanted to matter," Rachel said, "and she did. She mattered more than she could have possibly imagined." They passed around both photographs. 4 generations looking at the images of Eleanor and Dorothy. Moments captured accidentally. Moments that had created all of them. "I want to do something," Rachel's mother said suddenly. "I'm 76 years old. I don't have many years left, but I want to spend them the way Mom did. The way Eleanor did. I want to matter." "You already matter, Grandma," Rachel's daughter said. "But I want to matter intentionally. I want to choose kindness every day, the way they did." They made a pact, the 4 of them. 4 generations of women who existed because of Eleanor's kindness. They would each maintain their own angel fund. They would each look for the desperate and the drowning. They would each pass it on. That night, Rachel couldn't sleep. She went to Dorothy's bedroom and sat on the bed. She opened the Bible to the book of Ruth. She looked at the photograph of Eleanor. "I found you," Rachel whispered. "I found out who you were. I met your family. I told them what you did. And we're going to make sure your kindness never stops. We're going to keep it going, forever." The house was silent. But Rachel felt something. Not a ghost, just a presence. A sense that somehow, somewhere both Eleanor and Dorothy knew. They knew that their story had been completed, that the circle had been closed. Eleanor had given everything to save a stranger. Dorothy had spent 60 years saying thank you, and now Rachel and her family would spend their lives doing the same. Rachel placed both photographs in the Bible, side by side. Eleanor alone in the first image, Eleanor and Dorothy together in the second. The giver and the receiver, the angel and the grateful. And Rachel added something of her own, a letter, written by hand. "Dear Eleanor and Grandma Dorothy, I found you both. I found your stories. I found the truth about June 14th, 1957 and everything that came after. Eleanor, you worried you'd never know how Dorothy's story ended. Let me tell you, it ended beautifully. Your gift saved her. She and Edward kept their home. Their baby, my mother, was born healthy in December 1957. They lived a good life, all because of you. Dorothy, you worried you'd never get to say thank you, but you did. You said it with every act of kindness, every prayer, every person you helped. Your entire life was a thank you note. Because of both of you, 4 generations exist, and we're going to keep the chain going. We're going to be Eleanor for someone else. We're going to be Dorothy for someone else. Thank you for showing me what inheritance really means. Not money, not property, but love, faith, kindness, the things that ripple forward forever, with love and gratitude. Rachel. She folded the letter and placed it in the Bible with the photographs. She closed the Bible carefully. Then Rachel prayed. Not a formal prayer, just honest conversation. Thank you for Eleanor. Thank you for putting her on that bus. Thank you for bringing her to that diner. Thank you for giving her the courage to stop. Thank you for making her generous. Thank you for her life, even though it was short. Thank you for showing me that one person's choice can change the world. Rachel stood and walked through Dorothy's house one last time. In the morning, she would return to her ordinary life. But she'd return changed. She'd return carrying Eleanor's kindness and Dorothy's faithfulness. She'd return determined to pass it forward, to be the answer to someone's prayer, because that's what inheritance means. Not what we receive, but what we pass on. Not what we keep, but what we give away. Eleanor had given everything to Dorothy. Dorothy had given everything to others. And now Rachel would give everything to whoever needed it. The chain would continue. The ripples would spread. The kindness would multiply forever. 3 months passed. Winter turned to early spring. Rachel had gone back to her normal life, but nothing felt normal anymore. She carried Eleanor and Dorothy with her everywhere. In her wallet, in her heart, in every choice she made. The Angel Fund had become real. Every month Rachel found someone drowning. A single mother whose car had broken down. An elderly neighbor who couldn't afford heating bills. A former student struggling to pay for community college. Rachel helped them all, anonymously, with the same note every time. Someone did this for my family once. Pass it on. Her daughter had done the same. Her son, initially skeptical, had started using his part-time job money to buy lunch for classmates who couldn't afford it. Her mother had paid off medical debt for 3 families in her retirement community. The ripples were spreading, but Rachel felt like something was unfinished. She had found Eleanor's story. She had met Jennifer. She had learned the truth, but she hadn't fully understood it yet. Hadn't fully grasped what it meant to give everything when you have nothing left. One evening in March, Rachel was back at Dorothy's house. She was finally preparing to sell it, going through the last boxes, making final decisions about what to keep and what to let go. She found another journal, one she'd missed before, tucked in the back of Dorothy's nightstand. This one was different. Smaller, more personal. The cover was worn almost smooth. Rachel opened it. The first entry was dated June 15th, 1957, the day after Eleanor had helped her. I don't know how to write this. I don't know how to capture what happened yesterday. A stranger saved us. A woman whose name I don't know sat next to me in a diner and became the answer to every prayer I've prayed for 6 months. Edward cried when I told him. Actually cried. I haven't seen him cry since his father died. He kept saying, "Why? Why would someone do that for us?" And I told him what she said to me. "I believe God hears you." That's all she said. But it was everything. I asked her why. Why stop? Why help? Why give so much to someone you don't know? And she looked at me with these eyes, these gentle, tired eyes, and she said, "Because I can. Because you need it. Because that's what we're supposed to do for each other." Then she said something I'll never forget. She said, "I don't know how long I have, but I know this. I'd rather spend my time being useful than being afraid." I didn't understand then, but I think she was sick. I think she was dying, and she chose to spend her last resources on me, on us, on strangers. Who does that? What kind of person gives everything when they have so little? An angel. That's who. A real, flesh and blood angel sent by God to save us. I will never forget her. Never. Even if I live to be 100, I will remember her face, her voice, her kindness, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to be what she was for me. Rachel's hands shook. Dorothy had known. She'd sensed that Eleanor was sick. She'd understood, even then, the magnitude of the sacrifice. Rachel kept reading, entry after entry, year after year. Dorothy chronicling every act of kindness she performed, always referencing Eleanor, always saying, "Because she did it for me." 1962. Helped a family today. The father lost his job. They were being evicted. I paid their rent for 3 months. Edward asked if we could afford it. I said, "We can't afford not to. Someone gave us everything when they had nothing. We have something. We have to give." 1975. Saw a pregnant woman crying in the grocery store today. She looked exactly like I must have looked in 1957. I paid for her groceries. I gave her money for rent. I told her, someone did this for me once. Pass it on. She asked my name. I didn't tell her. The angel never told me hers. 1988. Edward asked me today why I'm so obsessed with helping strangers. He loves me, but he doesn't fully understand. So I told him. I told him that every time I help someone I'm saying, thank you to the woman whose name I never learned. I'm keeping her alive. I'm making sure her kindness didn't end with me. He cried. He finally understood. 2003. I'm 75 years old today. I've been praying for the angel for 46 years. Every single day. I pray that she lived a good life, that she was happy, that she knew, somehow, that her kindness mattered. I pray that if she's in heaven, God tells her what she did, tells her that the entire family exists because she chose love. 2015. Rachel graduated college today. My granddaughter. Smart, kind, beautiful. She wants to be a teacher. She wants to help people. I see the angel in her. The kindness that started in 1957 is still flowing, still creating, still saving. I wish the angel could see this, could see what her one act created. Rachel was sobbing now. The weight of 60 years of gratitude was crushing and beautiful all at once. Dorothy had carried Eleanor every single day, had seen Eleanor and everyone she helped, had lived her entire life as a prayer of thanksgiving. But there was one more entry, the last one, dated just 2 weeks before Dorothy died. Rachel almost couldn't read it through her tears, but she had to. She had to know Dorothy's final thoughts about Eleanor. I'm dying. The doctors say weeks, maybe a month. I'm not afraid. I've had a good life, a blessed life, 89 years, a loving husband, a beautiful daughter, grandchildren who make me proud, but I have one regret, just one. I never got to say thank you, not to her face, not in words she could hear. I never got to look the angel in the eyes and tell her what she meant, what she did, how her kindness echoed across 6 decades. I'm writing this for whoever finds it, for Rachel, probably, my sweet granddaughter who doesn't know yet how much I love her, who doesn't know yet that she exists because a stranger chose compassion. If you find this, Rachel, I need you to do something for me. Find her. Find the woman in the photograph. Find out who she was, and tell her family what she did. Tell them that she saved us. Tell them that 4 generations exist because she stopped in a diner one afternoon and decided that a stranger's suffering mattered. Tell them that I prayed for her every single day for 60 years, that I never forgot her face, that I tried to be her for others, that my whole life was a thank you note I could never deliver. Tell them that when I die, the first thing I'm going to do in heaven is find her. And I'm going to hold her hands and I'm going to say what I never got to say on earth. Thank you. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for stopping. Thank you for caring. Thank you for saving us. Thank you for being God's hands. And tell them that she mattered, more than she could have ever known, more than words can express. She mattered infinitely. That's my last wish. Find her. Thank her. Make sure she's not forgotten. I love you, Rachel. You're going to be okay. You're going to understand someday why kindness is the only thing that matters, why gratitude is the only proper response to grace, why we have to keep passing it forward, forever and ever. Be the angel for someone else. Promise me. With all my love, Grandma Dorothy. Rachel collapsed onto the floor, the journal pressed against her chest, sobbing so hard she couldn't breathe. Dorothy had left her this mission, had trusted her with this sacred task. And Rachel had done it. She'd found Eleanor. She'd learned her story. She'd met her family. She'd made sure Eleanor wasn't forgotten. But reading Dorothy's final words, Rachel understood something she hadn't fully grasped before. This wasn't just about Eleanor and Dorothy. This was about every person who'd ever been saved by kindness. Every person who'd ever been seen when they felt invisible. Every person who'd ever been lifted up when they were drowning. This was about the fundamental truth that we need each other, that we're connected by invisible threads of grace, that one person's choice to stop, to see, to care, can create ripples that never end. Eleanor had been dying. She'd had every reason to focus only on herself, but she'd chosen differently. She'd chosen to spend her last resources on a stranger. She'd chosen to be useful rather than afraid. And Dorothy had received that gift and had spent 60 years multiplying it. Not because she had to, not because anyone was watching, but because she understood that love demands a response, that grace must be passed forward, that gratitude is an action, not just a feeling. Rachel stood up slowly. She walked to the window and looked out at the quiet street. Somewhere out there, right now, someone was drowning. Someone was crying. Someone was praying for a miracle they didn't believe would come. And somewhere, someone would stop. Someone would ask if they were okay. Someone would choose to help. Maybe it would be because they'd read about Eleanor and Dorothy. Maybe it would be because someone had helped them once. Maybe it would just be because they couldn't walk past suffering. It didn't matter why. It only mattered that it happened. That kindness continued. That the chain never broke. Rachel picked up her phone and called Jennifer. "I found one more thing," Rachel said. "Dorothy's last journal entry. She wrote it 2 weeks before she died. She asked me to find Eleanor, to make sure she wasn't forgotten, to tell Eleanor's family what she did." Jennifer was quiet for a moment. Then, "You did it. You honored both of them." "We're not done," Rachel said. "We're never done. This isn't a story with an ending. It's a story that keeps going. We have to keep it going." "I know," Jennifer said softly. "I know." They talked about starting something bigger, a foundation, maybe, a way to help more people, a way to turn Eleanor and Dorothy's story into a movement. Not for fame, not for recognition, but so more people would understand that one act of kindness can change everything. After they hung up, Rachel sat in Dorothy's bedroom one last time. She placed the final journal with all the others. She arranged the photographs carefully. Eleanor alone. Eleanor and Dorothy together. 4 generations of family photos showing everyone who existed because Eleanor had stopped. And Rachel understood, finally, what inheritance really meant. It wasn't about money or property or things you could hold in your hands. It was about values passed down, about choices that echo forward, about love that multiplies across time. Eleanor Thompson had lived 30 years. She'd died poor and sick and alone. But her life had created something eternal, something that would outlive every person who'd known her, something that would continue long after her name was finally forgotten. Kindness. The only inheritance that matters. The only legacy that lasts. And Rachel was going to make sure it never stopped. Rachel sold Dorothy's house in April. A young family bought it, a couple with their first baby on the way. Rachel didn't tell them the full story, but she told them enough, that her grandmother had lived there for 60 years, that it was a house built on faith and gratitude, that good things happened within those walls. Before she handed over the keys, Rachel walked through one last time, empty now, just walls and floors and windows. But she could still feel it, the presence of all those prayers, all those years of faithfulness, all that gratitude soaked into the foundation. She stood in the bedroom where Dorothy had knelt every night, where she'd prayed for Eleanor for 60 years, where she'd written in her journals about kindness and grace and the stranger who'd saved them. "I did it, Grandma," Rachel whispered to the empty room. "I found her. I told her story. I made sure she wasn't forgotten. And I'm going to keep passing it forward. I promise." The house was silent, but Rachel felt peace. She drove home with the last box of Dorothy's things in her trunk, the journals, the photographs, the letters, the Bible with the photographs tucked inside. These weren't just keepsakes, they were instructions, a roadmap for how to live. At home, Rachel's children were waiting. They'd made dinner, set the table. They wanted to hear everything. Rachel spread the photographs across the dining table. Eleanor alone, Eleanor and Dorothy together, Dorothy through the years. Rachel's mother as a baby, a child, a bride, a grandmother. Rachel as a child, her own children at various ages. "This is our family tree," Rachel said. "But it doesn't start with blood. It starts with kindness. It starts with a dying woman who chose to help a stranger. Everything we are comes from that choice." Her daughter touched Eleanor's photograph gently. "I've been thinking about her every day, about what she did. and I've been trying to do the same thing. Tell me. There's a girl at school, Sarah. She's been coming to class without lunch. I noticed she was losing weight, so I started packing 2 lunches. I give her one and pretend I'm too full to eat it. She doesn't know it's on purpose." Rachel felt tears forming. That's beautiful. Her son cleared his throat, uncomfortable with emotion but determined to share. "I've been helping this kid with homework. Marcus, he's failing because he has to work after school to help his mom. So I've been doing my homework at the library and letting him copy my notes. Not cheating, just notes. So he doesn't fall behind." "You're both being Eleanor," Rachel said. "You're both passing it forward." Her mother, who'd been quiet until now, spoke up. "I've been volunteering at the hospital, sitting with patients who don't have family, just being present. I realized that's what Eleanor did. She was just present. She saw Dorothy and she stopped, and she was present. They sat together, 4 generations, understanding finally what Dorothy had tried to teach them all along. That kindness isn't complicated. It's just seeing suffering and refusing to walk past it. It's just being present, being willing, being the answer to someone's unspoken prayer." Over the following months, something unexpected happened. Rachel had written down Eleanor and Dorothy's story, just for herself, she thought, just to process everything she'd learned. But her daughter had read it, and asked if she could share it with her English teacher, who asked if she could share it with other students, who shared it with their parents. And slowly, quietly, the story spread. Not viral, not famous, but steady, like ripples moving outward from a stone dropped in water. Rachel started receiving messages from people who'd read the story and had started their own angel funds, from people who'd been helped by anonymous kindness and now understood it was part of a larger chain, from people who'd found photographs in their own grandparents' Bibles and wondered about the stories behind them. One message came from a woman in Ohio. "My grandmother had a photograph in her Bible, too, a stranger she'd met once who'd changed her life. I never knew who it was. But reading your story made me realize I should find out. I should honor that person the way you honored Eleanor. Thank you for showing me that these stories matter." Another from a man in Texas. "I was the kid whose groceries got paid for anonymously when I was 10. My mom was crying in the store because she couldn't afford food. Someone paid. Left a note. Pass it on. I never forgot it, and I've been passing it on for 30 years. But I never knew where it started. Your story helped me understand that I'm part of a chain that goes back further than I knew, that my kindness is connected to everyone else's kindness, that we're all linked." Rachel showed these messages to Jennifer. They talked regularly now, these 2 women connected by Eleanor's legacy. They'd become friends, sisters, almost, bound by something deeper than blood. "Aunt Eleanor would never believe this," Jennifer said. "She died thinking she'd done one small thing. She had no idea it would become this." "That's the point, though," Rachel said. "She didn't need to know. She just needed to do it. The results weren't her responsibility. The choice was." In June, on the anniversary of June 14th, 1957, Rachel did something special. She went back to Riverside, to the spot where Rosie's Diner had stood. It was still just a parking lot, but Rachel brought flowers. She brought the photographs. She brought her children and her mother. They stood in a circle on the asphalt where Eleanor and Dorothy had once sat across from each other in a booth, where one woman had been drowning and another had thrown her a rope, where everything had changed. 67 years ago today, Rachel said, 2 strangers met here. They talked for an hour, and that one conversation created all of us, created hundreds of acts of kindness, created a legacy that will never end." Her daughter read from Dorothy's journal, the entry about meeting Eleanor, about feeling hopeless and then feeling seen. Her son read from Eleanor's diary, the entry about choosing to be useful rather than afraid, about giving everything because it was the right thing to do. Her mother read from the final journal entry, Dorothy's last wish, to find Eleanor, to make sure she wasn't forgotten, to keep passing the kindness forward. And Rachel read the letter she'd written, the one she'd placed in Dorothy's Bible, thanking both women, promising to continue their legacy. Then they did something that felt right. They each wrote their own promise on a piece of paper, a commitment to pass forward Eleanor's kindness, to be someone's angel, to see suffering and stop. They buried these promises in the ground where the diner had stood. a time capsule of sorts, a marker that this place was sacred, that something holy had happened here. As they drove away, Rachel looked back at the parking lot one last time. It looked ordinary, unremarkable, just asphalt and painted lines. But she knew better. She knew that the most important moments often look ordinary, that the most powerful changes happen quietly, that holiness doesn't announce itself. That night, Rachel updated her Angel Fund journal. She'd helped 11 people in the past 3 months. A mother whose car had broken down, an elderly man who couldn't afford his prescriptions, a student who needed books for college, a family facing eviction. Each one received help with the same note. Someone did this for my family once. Pass it on. And she'd started receiving reports back. People she'd helped who were now helping others. The chain continuing. The ripples spreading. Rachel closed the journal and looked at the photograph on her desk. Eleanor and Dorothy in the diner. 2 women who'd taught her everything that mattered. That kindness is never wasted. That one person can change the world. That love multiplies when you give it away. She thought about Eleanor, dying at 30, probably never knowing that her one act would echo across 7 decades, would create 4 generations, would inspire thousands. And she thought about Dorothy, praying faithfully for 60 years for a woman whose name she didn't know, turning gratitude into action, making her whole life a thank you note. These were her grandmothers now, both of them, Eleanor by inspiration, Dorothy by blood, both teaching the same lesson, that we're here to be useful, to be kind, to be the answer to each other's prayers. Rachel picked up her phone and texted her children. I love you both, and I'm proud of who you're becoming. Keep being angels for others. Keep passing it forward. That's our family legacy. That's who we are. Her daughter responded immediately. Love you too, Mom. Sarah told me today that the lunches have been keeping her going. She doesn't know they're from me, but she knows someone cares. That's enough. Her son, Marcus, is passing his classes now. He said he's going to help other kids the way I helped him. It's spreading, Mom, just like you said it would. Rachel smiled through tears. It was working. The legacy was continuing. Eleanor's kindness from 1957 was still creating waves in 2024, and it would continue, long after Rachel was gone, long after her children were gone, forever, because that's what love does. It doesn't die. It doesn't fade. It just finds new hands to hold, new hearts to fill, new lives to change. Eleanor Thompson, born 1931, died 1959, lived 30 years, changed eternity. Dorothy Morrison, born 1935, died 2024, lived 89 years, spent 60 of them saying thank you. And now Rachel, and her children, and everyone who heard their story and chose to do the same. All of them carrying forward the same gift, all of them part of the same chain, all of them proof that one person's choice matters infinitely. Rachel turned off her desk lamp and walked to her bedroom. Tomorrow she'd get up and teach her classes. She'd grade papers and make dinner and do laundry. Ordinary things, normal things. But she'd do them differently now. She'd see her students as Eleanor had seen Dorothy, as people who might be drowning, as prayers waiting to be answered, as strangers who might need someone to stop, to see, to care. And when she saw that need, she wouldn't walk past it. She'd stop. She'd ask if they were okay. She'd help however she could. Because that's what Eleanor had taught her. That's what Dorothy had lived. That's what it means to be human, to see each other, to care for each other, to pass forward the kindness we've received. The photograph in the Bible, 2 women in a diner, 1 moment, 1 choice, infinite ripples. That was the inheritance. That was the legacy. That was everything that mattered, and it would never end. As long as someone, somewhere, chose kindness. As long as someone stopped to help a stranger. As long as love kept multiplying, forever and ever and ever. So I ask you now, who was the stranger who changed your life? The person whose name you never knew but whose kindness you never forgot? Take a moment and remember them. Honor them. Thank them, even if they can't hear you. And then ask yourself, whose stranger will you be? Who's drowning right now that you could help? Who's praying for a miracle that you could answer? Who needs someone to stop, to see, to care? You could be someone's Eleanor. You could be the moment that changes everything. You could be the kindness that ripples forward for generations. Rachel will never meet Eleanor Thompson, but she lives every day trying to be her, and now you know the story. Now you've seen what one choice can create. What will you do with that knowledge? Will you walk past suffering, or will you stop? The choice is yours. It's always been yours, and it matters more than you know. Share this story. Tell someone about Eleanor and Dorothy, about invisible angels and grateful hearts, about kindness that never dies, and then go be that kindness for someone else. Pass it on. Keep the chain going. Make your life a thank you note to every act of grace you've ever received. Because somewhere, in a Bible you'll never see, there might be a photograph of you, and someone might be praying for you every day, grateful for the moment you stopped, the moment you cared, the moment you changed everything. Be that person. Be someone's miracle. Be the answer. The photograph remains. The story continues. The legacy lives on in you.